the swamp. The same way they went out to the island, right? It's the same way that I feel that in the places like the cities, as far as like being inside of these very oppressive environments, we have gone into either wellness, into our herbs, we've gone into our gardens, we've gone into our kitchen, we've gone into our art. We've gone into these spaces to experience our own freedoms and sovereignty. And so I feel like this is happening in plain sight.
If you don't talk about it, you won't know it. I know it just because I come in contact with so many different kinds of people.
So I know just in my own family, like they were part of that original group of people in, you know, the late 1880s and 1890s that went into this pretty much swamp and cleared this swamp to create this black haven.
I've seen how important it has been for me to heal through my relationship with nature and plants. And so I want to share that with other people because I think that it's something that is like our birthright and our ancestral like heritage, and that a lot of the like disconnection that we feel in society is because we're not connected to nature and we're not connected to plants.
All around you, you have Yoruba people here, you have Afghan people here that are practicing. Like I'm going to a water ritual on Saturday, where we still practice cultural things, healings and rituals and things like that. And you'd be amazed at people that are involved. They're right in plain sight.
Yeah.
If you don't talk about it, you won't know it. And what I found, especially during the pandemic, more people are seeking out natural, indigenous cultures and practices because now they've become more relevant. Now more relevant. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired, so they are looking for a way to actually be able to heal themselves. Now all of a sudden, you see how they got the what do you call the ladies that the doulas? What's the other word? The midwives.
And doulas.
That kind of disappeared. If you didn't see it, you had to seek them out. But now, you know, up on 17th Street by the...
That's where I had my baby.
You had your baby? The baby you have right now, that little girl?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the baby I have, so I was clear, all of my friends are like were midwives and doulas and herbalists and like all of us. And so like literally 11 or 12 of us became pregnant at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And so we all knew each other years before, but we all ended up at the birth center.
Who knew?
Right?
Same energy.
Right? Same energy. And so we literally have raised them all as cousins. We raised them
As you
pretty much
should.
together.
As you should.
Yeah.
Because we always dealt with the elders. You always have a second mom or some second mother outside of your birth mother that you can go to, because you need one person in your life that you can tell the truth to, and they can advise you. The Eastern Market is where you found most of us vendors, you know, working, selling their herbs, selling their wares, their homemade goods coming up from the farm, and it was acceptable and it was allowed. But it was only on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday. And believe it or not, to this day, it's still only on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, where you find people, indigenous people from all over, come up here to sell their wares, their products. Usually you would find it only at the Amish markets.
Right.
But you know, we actually do have these little spots. They're just little spots. Another spot that disappeared was Union Market.
Yes.
Union Market is where
everything.
was everything. And then what happened? It burnt down. Remember, Eastern Market burnt down.
Yes, it did.
And in the redevelopment, didn't bring everybody back. Everybody couldn't afford to come back. Everybody couldn't find the space. It was no longer available to you. Okay, and you may have been there 50 years, but that space is no longer available. And now when you go up there to Union Market, it's the dynamics are completely different, and rarely can you find any black-owned business. There are few because I go to them, but very few because nobody can afford it. The leases around here are 20,000 and over. 20,000 and over, so it's very hard. And people are talking about the pandemic. No, businesses were shut down before the pandemic because as the developers started coming back in, mom and pop businesses like mine and things like that, nobody can afford that rent on this type of corridor. So guess where they were pushed out to? Maryland and Virginia, because they could no longer afford to be. And I am blessed, beyond blessed, to be able to have my office on this particular block of a street, which is the most popular business block, because Eastern Market is right there. I get lots of walkable traffic. You know, you can come from wherever you want to come and get off in Eastern Market and still get to my business. But even the people on the block are always saying, how is it that you're still here? The universe has provided for me when I came here, and when it's time for me to move, it'll provide another space.
I think being an adoptee is what I take from my past. That I think is what brought me to herbalism, and brought me to working with plants, is feeling that I didn't know anything about who I came from, who my ancestors were, but that working with plants and working with herbs was a way to like heal the trauma of adoption and separation from my parents and from my lineage, but also was a way for me to reconnect with ancestors who I know I got these like skills from. And so that's how I started the journey. And I just love to teach and I love to share things, and I've seen how important it has been for me to heal through my relationship with nature and plants. And so I want to share that with other people, because I think that it's something that is like our birthright and our ancestral like heritage, and that a lot of the like disconnection that we feel in society is because we're not connected to nature and we're not connected to plants, and we're not honing our skills to like listen and see and understand the plant world and all of the gifts that it can give to us on this journey here. So in today's society, I create sovereignty within my own self by being an herbalist, by creating spaces where community can learn how to take care of each other, and by creating spaces where us as Black people can feel like free and safe to do the things that we want to do without other people, I want to say controlling, but deciding what we should do.
You know, I don't think I had ever thought about what plants, what foods were healing my people. And that put me onto like an Instagram spiral and a research spiral to find the people that are doing this work, and the literature that I can look to and the stories that I can hear. And in particular, I think the plant that has been most drawn to me through that is garlic.
Interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah, and garlic is something that is used as an antiviral, antimicrobial, that is used historically in our cooking, that was used, like the smell of garlic was used to persecute and to seek out and to know who is Jewish by how they smell. And so it has been like an ingredient of resistance for us too. My family history, the culture that I most identify with is my Jewish history. And my mom is really the person who kept that alive within my family, my childhood and into my adulthood. And you know, we identify more culturally as Jewish than religiously Jewish, and so for me that means that it's all about the holidays, the celebrations, the food. Um, and I think my mom passed away last year, and so that has been a transition for me, really coming into my own practice with Judaism, and especially this year, with everything that happened this spring in Palestine, what it means to be like fiercely anti-Zionist in my Judaism, and grounded, proud, and humble of my, like humble around my traditions. And, you know, in terms of this community and in terms of like plant medicine and herbalism specifically, I think I have been in a journey of looking to my Jewish ancestry to inform what is healing for me in this space too. And that began for me at an herbal gathering called the Chesapeake Herbal Gathering that happens in this area, which was one of my first kind of touches with this community, this DMV community of herbalists. And I was at a workshop that was held by an herbalist from California, Mama Maiz, who was literally in the middle of speaking in this workshop, and stopped herself and said, you know, what I was about to say, I don't think I am meant to share. And what I want to share instead is that all of you in this room need to look to your own cultures for what will heal you.
So I know just in my own family, like they were part of that original group of people in, you know, the late 1880s and 1890s that went into this pretty much swamp and cleared this swamp to create this black haven. And even up through, you know, 1960, Mount Bayou was a place that all black, its own, had doctors, own post office. It was just like this own maroon village, if you will, in the midst of everything else that's, you know, in the Delta. And that's my family. That was part of that experience. And so just what they did, the plants that they cultivated, all of this is things that are passed on to me that I have to pass on to my children now. And it's definitely a response to kind of pulling away from the society, being, you know, separate from, but while still having that, you know, connection to kind of the outline world, but being separate from in this, you know, safe space. Even this garden, we think of kind of coming in this type of work in what people would call like, you know, as the result of like a food apartheid, or what they call, you know, the food desert, if you will. So be able to go and have these type of spaces. You know, there's so many coming up now. Just really important to have these, you know, maroon villages. It's literally, that's what it is, where this type of knowledge can be passed on and people can know how to navigate in 2021.
Pretty much majority of the beds have some aspect of it. This bed behind you is one where they were all really combined together, and it's really at the forefront facing when you first come into the garden. That was something I wanted people to see, the plants that are part of my own, you know, my own bloodline that were passed on to me, the plants that I remember traveling, being around my grandparents, plants that my father grew, you know, even though we grew up in, you know, I'm from Milwaukee, grew up in the city, and in a backyard smaller than this, we grew, you know, a few of these. So, and it's, you know, like you said, it's stories. So it's like when I look at these plants, I have stories connected to my grandparents, of my interactions with them, experiences that are in what we call sweet potato. Okra, there's stories that have been passed down to me about how to cultivate it, how to grow it, when you should harvest it, and then how was ways and wisdoms about that plant that, as an herbalist, that, you know, trained later in life, going back and understanding things that people tout in the herbalism and even in Chinese medicine, a lot of things that from a very ancestral point were just part of the way, knowledge and ways that, you know, my own ancestors were growing. And even in these times, as we look at the climate, political, a lot of the changes and things that are coming, you know, through that, it's like, this is a conversation that's more important now than ever, as people decide, like, how are we going to be in new laws and new regulations, things unfold. Like, how do you be in this? And maybe I need to find out a little bit of how marooned,
Right.
because
We
that
might
may
have
be
to
we might have to
maroon.
get up on some maroon stuff, depending on where you stand in the spectrum
That's right.
of this. So yeah.
I think it's even important to understand that even if you don't have a whole maroon colony or you have a whole town or city, that like you said, just these spots, that even if maroonage only takes place in your kitchen with your children and your family and your partner, like that in our day-to-day life there are ways that we can access the ancestral technology of maroonage and apply it to the work that we're doing, and I think it's important to do that.
Isn't it interesting that the spider is caught between collard greens and black eyed peas? Like, that's what it
Listen,
chose
would you
to
look
do.
at that?
There's some
This
little
ancestral spider.
spider pulls
Come
up
on
on
now,
us.
between the collard greens. Wait a minute, okay.
Right.
You gotta tell us what this spider did again, dear. What's the spider doing?
It's literally its web. So this is an orb weaver. Its web is connecting between the collard green leaves and the leaves of these black eyed peas. Like, you can't get more of an ancestral plant connection than that. That's what's up.
That's what's up. It's all day. It's been such.
One of those days, yeah.
It's been like ancestors straight. Oh my God, this is a beautiful shot. Ancestors at work. Hold on, keep your hand right there. So if you could tell them one thing about October 2nd, what are you doing on October 2nd?
Okay. All right. So on October 2nd, here at the Nicholson Project, I will be leading my final workshop of, it's been a 5-part series, so this will be the 5th workshop of the year, different garden related events. This one will be making cha-cha or chow-chow, depending on where you're from. So that's basically just a vegetable relish. And so we will be harvesting all is typically used with using some type of greens, peppers, tomatoes, onions made into a relish, typically used as a topping on beans for people who consume like different like sausages, hot dogs, and that, so it has a pretty wide use. But we'll be making cha-cha and talking about food preservation